Wait, we can't. We started the broadcast with Mark's face. We can't have that.
Yeah.
There we go. That's better. That's the only reason why I talked.
Oh, boo.
All right. I do believe we are live. Let's wait and see for people to actually catch.
Yeah,
Okay.
it just showed up.
Hey, we're here. All right. I'm going to get back here, get on the screens. Have we got anyone? People are coming. Wait, we got a hola live. All the people. Okay, they're all there. Okay. How you doing, guys? Greetings and all that. We've got another little live feed happening here. As usual, late notice and not much organization, but that's normally me. So thanks for coming in, guys. And we've got you guys in the chat there. So if you guys have got any questions or topics or something like that that we want to talk about later on, if we've got time, I'm sure all the guys here will be happy, including me, to talk about it or answer questions and so forth. So keep on asking those questions. But for the time being, we're going to concentrate on what we came here to talk about, which is sort of, as in the title, sort of regulation, future of FPV, and so forth. I've just had some interesting conversations with people, and I figured we could do a little bit of a live feed about it and talk about various things. So you guys all know me. If you don't know me, hi, I'm just a regular guy talking bullshit. You don't need to know any more about me. But I'll quickly introduce the other guys here, going from right to left. Next we've got Mr. Mark Coquillo, Strepto, 42, general partner in crime. And Mark is on here because he was bored and had nothing else to do. So he's here to talk as well. Next along the line, we've got Mr. H.M. Joseph. Joe, how you doing, buddy? If anyone watches my live streams, they'll be fully aware that Joe is normally hanging around in the background somewhere going, yeah, sure, I'll be a part of this again. I don't need to feed my kids tonight. So you guys are probably all familiar with them. Yeah. And last on the end here is someone that I actually haven't had on a live feed before, but just spoke to kind of recently, is Bobby. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Bobby?
Yeah, FPV enthusiast. I run Quad Lab with Bob Ruge, who designs the Hyperlight frames, the floss frames. FPV Kebab, and yeah, I'm on there as the FPV Bobak. We use, it's like a product accelerator for the FPV drone industry, and yeah, my full-time job is working for actually a consumer and commercial drone company, which I'm not going to mention. And yeah, just love flying, just like you guys.
Yeah, sounds good. So yeah, I recently saw you on your Facebook page. You were talking about various drone regulation types of contexts and subjects, which I found quite interesting, and it was finding myself nodding my head a lot, and that's why I asked if you wanted to jump on and do a bit of a talk about it, because I think there's a lot of talk out there in the hobby scene. Yeah, you're ruining the hobby, and that's good. You're doing this and doing that, and everyone's arguing about what's right and what's wrong. And what you were talking about really seemed to ring true with a lot of the things that I've seen within the industry. That, in a nutshell, the industry doesn't care about this niche industry of hobbyist FPV pilots anyway. We're kind of a flash in the pan. I guess you want to talk some more about that?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess it's kind of, we should clarify, like, FPV drones, as you mentioned, are a small niche of the overall UAV industry, and that industry is like $20 billion, I think. It's supposed to be 20-something billion, I think, within the next 4 years. Yeah, that, I think that the industry is largely, it's split and it's diverging with a lot of emphasis really in commercial and industrial. And I think that, I have one of these, this little 2.5 inch drone. It was like $100, and it came. I bought it, I think, off GearBest or something, and it flies great. And but it was difficult for me to learn how to fly in acro. I mean, I've been flying for probably, I think, 2 years, and I got into it because I had a DJI Phantom, and that thing just blew my mind in many ways, and I got bored, and I wanted something that was a little bit quicker. But the DJI made me think, this drone is so easy to fly. My 87-year-old grandpa was flying it, my girlfriend, and all sorts of people in my life. I would just let them fly the drone because it was so easy. It'd go out of range, it would come back automatically every single time. You could fly it miles away. It would provide an HD image, and it made me think more and more about the overall potential. And I think since then, we've seen DJI change and shift and focus a lot in the commercial enterprise space. We've seen the development of UAV technology with Fortune 500 companies and Fortune 100 companies like Amazon developing drones and essentially a airship type of a warehouse that deploys drones to deliver packages. You have Google with their Project Wing program, and you have a bunch of, I think Facebook had another one, drones flying over Africa. And in the last couple of years, you're seeing, I think, an explosion, particularly in the last 2 years, an explosion of these companies popping up to provide, commercial and industrial solutions, whether it's for oil and gas, which is a big thing with methane inspection, whether it's HVAC inspection, residential, commercial, energy efficiency with like solar panels, or just something as simple as just delivering like a defibrillator from a drone if you call 911 and you're having a heart attack. All of these things have unique potential in, I think, improving the quality of life of the developed world. I think there's a company called Zipline that their whole program is to deliver blood bags in rural parts of Africa to villages who don't really have access to hospitals. And this is like real life-saving technology. And if you think about, this potential and its ability to kind of really shape our world, we're going to have to adapt as hobbyists. And what really makes all of that industrial, commercial, cool, Jetsons type technology possible is ultimately, in some ways, machine learning. The other one is improved connectivity, and third is some sort of trackability, an identification system. So they're all GPS drones, and that gives a lot of types of utility. And many people who currently work in computer vision and autonomous vehicles will probably tell you that the issue isn't self-driving cars by themselves. It's self-driving cars adapting to human intervention, human-driven cars, and that's a huge barrier. That's literally, they're spending trillions of dollars almost in terms of research and development and new types of companies to solve that problem. And it'd be very easy, particularly in the UAV space, to just outlaw consumer UAVs or restrict them heavily, to the point where I really think that FPV drones, or particularly racing, is going to shift to being an indoor-only type sport. It's something that it will be very, unfortunately, you won't be able to fly these in your parks in the same way, or even in front of your house anymore, because it's going to negatively impact Amazon and Google and Gold Cross's ability to deliver services to your respective community. And there's a good chance that will be outlawed. And there's been some push recently with there was the AMA finally kind of, I think, and this is a different discussion we can talk about, but there was a push by Congress to kind of further regulate these types of drones, which was shut down. And it wasn't shut down, I think, due to the advocacy of the AMA. I think it was shut down due to the fact that Congress didn't have enough clarity and definition on this type of technology. And it's just a matter of time. So if we talk about these things, this is a hobby. I hate to say it, unless you're a business owner, then it's your lifeline. But this is a hobby. And so we're if you look at it, these are my girl jokes. She's like, "You're just playing with your toys again?" And I laugh because I turn and I'm like, yeah, I am, and I'm enjoying myself. And we get so frustrated doing this stuff, but unfortunately, this is kind of what this is at its core. And if you fly it in the park and people think that you're spying on them, it's just a toy. And because it's just a toy, it doesn't really offer the same utility that I think a drone that is a commercial, municipal, or industrial type of drone is. So I think that we have a short, limited window, guys, and I think that the industry, unfortunately, FPV drone industry has been somewhat fragmented. I don't even know if I'm allowed to even talk about it, but maybe I will. We see a lot of competition, and you see folks, you see this idea of people talk about cloned products and whatnot. Well, at the end of the day, the problems in FPV I think are also being experienced by the developed world. There was a recent email I got from a company, I think it was Product Hunt, and they were talking about why American tech startups have difficulty competing against Chinese tech startups. There's a article in The Verge, I think published earlier this year, on why American drone companies can't compete. And it talks about a number of things, and I think the number one being is access to the commodified products, and two is cheap labor. So DJI, as an example, I think has 2,800 engineers. Most of these folks have master's degrees in engineering, and they're getting paid 10 grand a year. Think about 3DR trying to do that, or any other drone company in the United States. You just can't compete. It's just that's a hard thing to come across. And so I just see I see so many companies, in my opinion, and I've alluded to the folks at Immersion and TBS to be like, man, you guys really you're like the Apple and Google in this space. And if you want to stop Amazon, which is Banggood and these other Chinese companies, you have to really work together and build some sort of business alliance, and maybe bring Flightwino in there because they make really great product. And industry is so small that people just really, I think, need to just get along and think of it in a larger scale. But it's incredible to me to see that something that is people are so passionate about, and it really is, in my opinion, one of the most exciting things I've done in a very long time. Is so disorganized, and in some ways you could say unprofessional. I wish I had Bob Ruge here to give his thoughts on it, because we had an issue, and I don't know, we had some miscommunication problems with the company and with Quad Lab, and it resulted in the delay of rapid fire modules. And I wonder, I have like a couple of them here for the folks who are overseas, because I had to hand fill out all of the customs forms. And I was just thinking, like, man, like, this is really difficult stuff. And if you really want to make this happen, you have to, I think, put in 110%. You got to be like Sergio from Pyroflip, where you put in 12-hour days, 15-hour days, where you do everything yourself, and you really create this really, I think, effective customer service and user experience that I think is hard to replicate, man. Sorry to rant.
Yep. That's all right. That's ranting is a thing on this on these live feeds. That people tend to rant, but I totally agree with you. As someone who's been involved inside and behind the scenes in this industry for a very long time, I've seen what you're talking about: companies not working together and actively fighting one another. And I've seen that the reasoning for that was, back in the early days, there was this glamour of this being the next Formula One event and big money, so that if you could squash all the competition when it got big, you were going to be the one that was going to be hitting all that with the ground running, so to speak, and being able to being able to win all that. And I think a lot of these companies are finally realizing that massive pot of gold is not there, at least yet, if not ever. I don't know. But there's this sort of hate that's been put out there that it's very hard to sort of troll through that. And going back, I was watching the comments that people people were talking about when you were talking there. It was interesting when you were talking about regulation and over time us losing our rights to fly anywhere except for indoors. And there's a lot of comments are going, well, that's because of all the morons out there. I truly believe that has nothing to do with that. That the simple fact of the matter is, whether we are 100% behaved or not, where we fly is in the sub 500 foot airspace, which 10 years ago was completely unused. And over the next 5-10 years is going to be the most crowded and fought for airspace. Now, think about this like frequencies, like the FCC governs frequencies. Mm-hmm. There's only so much frequency spectrum to use, and people fight for that really, really hard. This is the same thing with that sub 500 foot space is going to be an extremely hard fought after area as the whole drone industry grows. And what's going to happen is people like us, whether we're law-abiding citizens or not, are going to get squeezed out. You want to know why? Because there's no money. We can't offer them millions and billions of dollars of money. The big companies can. So whatever happens, we lose. And if you compare us, a lot of people compare us to, say, skateboarding, where, oh yeah, skateboarding, they'd get kicked out of the city and they just come back. The difference is that the skateboarders in the city weren't really affecting anyone except for being a bit of a nuisance, where we have a perceived safety threat because now we're in the air. The moment you get into the air, the whole safety factor gets blown right out of the water, and it becomes an issue. Like, we are no different to the skateboarders in real life, but regulation says otherwise. We're not just a nuisance, we're a safety issue for all babies within the 3-mile radius. And that becomes a real serious issue. So I totally agree that in the future, we're going to have real problems. And I've seen that coming for a while. And I say that regardless of how we act, whether or not we're law-breaking pricks or we're law-abiding good citizens and so forth, doesn't make a difference. Well, we don't have anything to offer, and money talks, and we don't have it.
Yeah, that's why we have a tiny ISM band to broadcast on in the whole frequency range out there. It's the same thing. We're going to end up in the same space virtually. With
I don't know if I necessarily agree with all that assessment, though, because the problem is that there are people that do fly, that do have money, and there are people that basically are toy or their own craft on their own property. It's just not. There's got to be a way enough's enough where of our house should be our own, to the fact that we can build let's say a large building that's 50, 100 feet tall in our yard because we own that airspace. Why can't we fly a drone in that airspace? So I don't think that, I mean, there's so many thousands of people out there that are just specifically how we're going to go and take away all the little toy drones that are out there, and people aren't going to be able to fly them now. I mean, it just makes no sense, doesn't it?
Yeah. The difference is with a building, what you're doing is you're physically separating you from the outside airspace. So do what you need to do. It's not
I'm physically occupying that space regardless.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether I've got a drone hovering there, or if I've got a building there. That's still my airspace above my property. I mean,
and once again, the whole building thing is that's something that's gone back a long way in history. It's all fully understood. It's fully accepted. You build a building that's going. The whole drone thing is something completely different. It's new and
it's new, but
unknown. And so the whole new rules and regulations are coming out as a result of that. And at the end of the day, like everything else, rules and regulations will always slide towards those who can grease the wheels.
Well, it's absolutely ridiculous. It's just like somebody else owning mineral rights on my property.
Well, I mean,
I own that. I own all the rights to it.
Well, so in some ways, there are some people who do have, mineral rights to your property, and it ultimately So I think one of the things that a lot of these companies are trying to do, that the space between 500 and 400 feet they want to use, and they want to use that to provide specific services. Yeah, and corridor. So it's not even just, I don't think, just greasing the wheels. That's a part of it for sure. But think of if you're a lawmaker and you think of just the utility. I mean, look, okay, think of a good example is self-driving cars. Autonomous vehicles are going to unemploy people. It's going to be a problem. But I don't think that people really, one of the reasons it's going to happen is because it unfortunately reduces enough friction in a community and serves enough people a benefit that people outweigh those things. And it's not necessarily right. It's just unfortunately what I think will happen. And regarding the consumer drones, I think it's not I think it's going to be a confiscatory type of thing. It's more of you're not supposed to do that. And the likelihood of you crashing or having a mid-air impact would be very, very high. I mean, if you got fined $25,000 because your $50 drone crashed into an Amazon drone and caused a problem, you probably you wouldn't be inclined to want to fly again. And that probably depends on the community you live in, because certain communities I was talking with Chad about this. Like in the United States, we have like a, knock on wood, FPV is so unifying people from different cultures and communities. But folks who live in more rural, semi-rural, or suburban communities that have more space, like they're going to be probably a little bit less regulated than the folks who live in urban communities. I mean, it's going to be the cities, the densely populated areas that are probably going to have the Amazon delivery. They're already the guys who have the Prime Now in the first place. So I think, and it's like the problem is urbanization is driving all of this. It's driving all sorts of innovative technologies. And I think the chat alluded to the disruption. Disruptive technologies are technologies that laws and regulations haven't caught up with yet. You can look at like everything. I mean, that's why it's disruptive. You got those like electric scooters in the Bay Area that I guess are causing all sorts of havoc and in Denver and shit. That seems pretty disruptive too. I mean, I hope it doesn't happen. I'm not trying to say it's like some doomsday thing, but there's a real concern in that regard. For example, where I live in Salt Lake City, one of the people who has the contract to provide emergency services for ambulances, they want to deploy defibrillators, and nobody in the right mind. I live in a state that has like open carry for guns, and so people can like walk around with like a gun on their holster, and so it's a very, I would say, conservative state, and even they are considering looking at regulations that you can't fly over other people's property if you're an individual, but B, you can't be flying in anywhere but your own property in other areas. So you can't go fly like Seattle. You can't fly in a public park, for example. Doesn't matter if it's 250 grams or a tiny whoop. It's just you can't fly a remote control aircraft in the park. It's just, I mean, I'm not saying it's a good law. It's just unfortunately this byproduct. And sorry to rant on that.
That's all right. It's a byproduct of fear.
I get that, but I mean, with this new announcement, though, it's like you're going to tell me that this little craft right here is going to be something that I need a license for, and then I basically am putting the general public at in harm's way by flying it. I mean, I can literally spike it off my forehead, and it's I mean that's just preposterous to think that we're now going to have to be licensed and regulated to.
I mean,
kind of equipment. I mean, it's just.
Sorry, Joe.
Do you want a case in point, Joe? This is how stupid and fucking retarded all this is. Hang on a second. So I had to pull a couple of videos down from a YouTube channel. One of them was the video removing oneself from the equation, which is flying out on Morton Island, which is a pretty much deserted island out in the middle of nowhere, open airspace, nothing wrong with it. Someone reported it to CASA. CASA then put together a group of about 10 people, high-profile people within CASA, who had board meetings and assessed the situation. I then got contacted by CASA. A lady, an investigator lady, flew up from 2 states away, a 3-hour plane flight, and spent the day with me, interviewing me, basically interrogation style. Then spent the next 4 weeks with those people on nearly a full-time basis, looking at the situation, writing up a report, and sending it back to me. Now, I ran the risk of a number of things. First of all, a slap on the wrist. Number 2, small fine. Number 3, big fine. We're talking a couple of $1,000s. Also losing my commercial license, commercial drone license, which is my only source of money, and the possibility of full-scale license being affected. At the end of the day, what I got was a slap on the wrist and being told not to do this again. And this is like, I put I had a Vortex 150, tiny little Vortex 150. I put this down and I said, okay, so I don't want to think how much money you guys have spent on looking at this, where I've been flying like basically an abandoned island. And one of the issues was flying beyond visual line of sight, where I flew 800 meters away over a sand dune that had nothing on it except for sand. And that to them was dangerous and illegal.
You flew over whales. You could have hurt those whales.
Yeah.
The whale species.
So I got all that, and the upshot of that is, if I do that again, I could lose my commercial license. I could get a large fine because I flew over a sand dune about 800 meters away. And to give you an idea of just how ridiculous this is, this is the limitations that I've got as Final Glide Oz flying in Australia. Okay, so I fly FPV. First of all, how can I fly FPV legally? I need to be a member of the MAAA, which is the Australian version of the AMA. So I need to do that. But the problem is that to fly legally with the MAAA, you fly under their insurance, and the only way that their insurance is actually legal and above board is by flying at any one of their approved fields. Read any one of their model club fields. So if I go and fly in the park, if I go and fly in a park, I'm not insured, so I'm not covered by MAAA. Therefore, flying illegally. Yeah. So must fly with a spotter. But if I'm flying, even if I'm flying at my own property back at home, I'm not flying legally, so I can't take off. So I'm liable for getting in trouble right there. Then it comes to you must be 30 meters away from people and property. And unless you're flying out in the bush, that becomes extremely hard to stay away from property as well as people. And then finally, the issue is distance. So I flew what I considered to still be within visual line of sight. And it's a very gray area. And I said, what is your consideration of visual line of sight? Their response was more than 300 feet or 100 meters away in perfectly line of sight. That to them is outside of line of sight. So most park flights that you do, according to CASA here in Australia, are outside of line of sight. You can't fly in populous areas. And also I said, okay, what about flying behind objects? What do you consider outside of line of sight? And they said, any solid object that you fly behind that takes longer than you to blink your eye for it to come back in sight again is flying behind visual line of sight. So if you're flying behind a row of trees or a bathroom, like a toilet or your house or a shed, you are flying illegally. And this is what I've got. This has got what I've got resting on my shoulders, that if I do that again and I post videos, I could have a big fine from them.
So when are we doing it again?
Well, here's my advice to people out there. If any one of these government organizations comes up and gets you in trouble, first bit of advice, do not admit that you flew anything, because these people cannot prove that you flew. They have no way of proving that you flew that.
And they have no way of proving your craft and its weight.
Yeah. Burden of proof is always there.
You know, there's another very notable pilot who we won't mention, who was flying over a bridge or something like that. He's up north, Canada. I think that America might adopt something very similar to what the Canadians have with the 250-gram limit. Yeah. I think the Canadians are kind of pushing the micro game. Yeah. No offense to Tomo Quads and Air Arsenal and the other great guys, but they're just kind of restricted and forced to do so. And but there's no proof, right? If I showed you a video, it could be from my Alien, it could be from a Helix or whatever.
Yeah,
they'll just say it's a 250-gram quad.
Well, it's still what you're saying there is still relevant. But here's the crappy thing about Australia: we don't have the 250-gram limit. It's 100 grams here.
What?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
It's 100 grams in Australia.
You know, at what point do we as a community stand up, though? I mean, you're going to tell me that I can't give this to my kid to fly, which, I mean, I just did. I gave one to both of my sons. And I mean, they're no threat to anybody, especially flying at, our own property or whatever. But, let's say just in general, in public, they should be able to fly it without any questions. It's not going to hurt anybody, but it then becomes the question about money. Well, if they're flying FPV, now they have to have a ham operator's license, and they have to be a member of AMA and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It just, I mean, that's you know, a $75. Well, actually, AMA just came out with this year that anybody 18 and under is free membership. So
That's great.
Well, here's the interesting thing, the way that I see with what you're talking about there, Joe. So you give your kid that quad to go and fly in the park. So long as you're not trying to fly it at something extremely dangerous, no one's going to care. But here's the interesting thing. If you get yourself into a situation where the government wants to leverage itself over by you to basically make an example of you, they've got something that they can now use. Like, that's what they're doing. That's what they're doing with someone like me. So
yeah,
it might seem all stupid, and they'll probably never do it. But if you get yourself into a situation where you've got something to lose and they've got something to gain, now they've got that. And that's what I dislike about all that sort of situation.
Sure, it all comes down to money and control, though. But I mean, I'm going to tell you right now, somebody comes onto my property and tells me to shut down my quad because of whatever reason. I literally bought all this stuff legally, and now I own it, and I'm not able to use it now. No, that's not going to fly.
Well, here I would take this one thing further, and I've been before I go into that, I've been waiting for a break to actually introduce her. Kathleen actually jumped in mid-conversation, so she's there. I don't know if you've got your audio or anything like that working, Kathleen.
Does it work?
Oh, yeah. Yep. You got it working. Okay, cool.
Okay.
So Kathleen's here to make the hobby look better because we're all extremely ugly.
No.
Plus, she's got some good opinions. So anyway, I'll continue on with that. This is my
unrealistic.
Yeah, well, this is my big beef. So one of the videos that they had a problem with was me flying closer than 30 meters to my friends who were involved in the flying, fully aware of what was going on, and we were flying on private property, a long way from anywhere else. We were underneath the canopy. Now, here in Australia, if I want to go and drive a car, I have to wear a seatbelt. It has to be registered. That car has to be safe for it to go on the road. Now, if I take that car and I make it unsafe, I take the seat belts out and so forth. I can do whatever I want on my property. If I want to go smash it into a tree, I can do whatever I want. Now, what I don't get and what I think is totally fucking retarded as far as I'm concerned is, so long I'm underneath the tree canopy, I'm not affecting anyone else. If I want to fly past my friends, if I want to run into my friends, what's that got to do with these organizations here? Like,
well, exactly. It's just like here. You could put a 10-year-old behind the wheel of a car on private property and nobody cares.
Yeah. This is my whole problem. But the issue comes in that as soon as you take off, you're now in controlled airspace. And the FAA, CASA, EASA, all those places they're organizations that are there to they're for safety and for safety regulation only, and they've been around for a very long time. And for 99% of their existence, they've been there to regulate full-scale aircraft. Now we've got this intrusive technology that's coming in, and all of a sudden, with like the flick of a wrist, we've got now got this new technology that they are finding extremely hard to regulate, and they don't know what the fuck to do. So they either ignore it, or they over-regulate it.
Yeah, but I'll take it one step further, okay? So bullets travel through airspace, and yet you can go out and shoot on your own property something that is absolutely deadly. And
you can.
Right, exactly. I mean, in the United States, you can go out to your property, you can put a firearm in a 10-year-old's hands and have them shoot at a target, and that's completely legal. But now we can't put a drone in a 10-year-old's hands, and that's not going to be legal? That makes no sense to me whatsoever.
Yeah, you can do archery in Australia too. It's the same thing,
Yeah.
When I was a kid, we used to shoot bows up the driveway in the middle of suburbia, I think probably get in trouble for doing that now.
Well, it's funny because here
Yeah.
in the city that I live in, you can't even the airsoft, the little pellets or whatever. You can't play with airsoft pistols or guns in your on your own property because the police get called.
Airsoft's completely legal in Australia.
Completely illegal to play with in the city here.
Yeah. You can't even own them or import them in Australia.
Yeah.
I used to have one, got stolen.
The drones though, as an example, it's ridiculous. And 100 grams, I mean, this thing might be a little bit less than 100 grams, honestly. A tiny whoop is well less than 100 grams. But, dude, I was talking. This is like it's like the early days of the internet and how we define like cybersecurity and stuff like that. What should be regulated and what shouldn't? Because unfortunately, if you really wanted to do something nefarious and fucked up or evil or whatever with this technology, you could. Yeah. And all the products are, I mean, I buy
but
this
you
stuff.
Can do that with anything.
Yeah, but
let me clarify something. That's absolutely true, right? But I can do it for $300, and I could do it if I was like 12 years old, just for example, okay?
And I
just
can do it with
theory.
$50 at the hardware store at 10 years old.
Yeah, I mean, it really comes down to intent and the scope, right? Because like if you wanted to be like an individual to, you know, I mean, I'm not exactly trying to justify it. It's just this idea of, do drones provide it's a whole new threshold. Everything we do, even guns, it's like on the ground, right? The idea of surface to air, air to air. I'm not a pilot, but it's just this airspace that's just for people who are flying planes and to keep them safe. So a lot of the not to call out that guy or bring up any sort of bad news, but there was this video in Vegas, as you're probably aware, my homie Joe, you know what I'm talking about? The video of the Frontier Airlines plane?
Yep.
Right. So it's like, God forbid if something like that would have gone wrong. And I'm just going to say worst case scenario. I'm not trying to be, you know, hyperbolic, or we'll just say theoretically. If something would have gone wrong and it did hurt, you know, an aircraft in some way that did kill even one person, there would be such a backlash because of the actions of one fool, right? And there's also this one thing that it made me realize: there's a lack of thought leadership and knowledge in this space. Like I got in the space watching Chad and the other guys in Rotor Ride, and I could never land the quad without crashing. But it's like, wow, these guys were doing power loops, and these were like on Vortex 250s, and which some would say are antiquated by today's standards. And you were some of the few people who knew that, I would say, in the world that were really good at it. And if you were to even think of it from there's probably 1,000 people, right, out of 1 billion people who will say 2 or 3 years ago who could fly drones that well. I mean, that's a really small percentage, and a lack of like people who understand that stuff. And now we look at the people who are the best pilots in the world, particularly racers. They're kids, and this technology proliferates in a way that I think is we don't really understand it just yet. And I would argue that the politicians, not to get political, they sure as hell don't understand it, because, you know, I used to joke. I was talking to my buddy today. It's like, man, like I'm 30 years old. My parents' generation, we joked that and no offense to any of the baby boomers, but how the baby boomers had a different scenario or whatever, etc. But then it's like, man, it's not even the baby boomers who are in political power right now. It's really like my grandparents' generation. And and how do they view UAV technology? How do they like view drones?
They don't even understand it.
Right. And what are the other types of backward ass shit that they believe in as a reference point? So I think it comes down to like good advocacy, and just, it's actually insane. I've never had a person, I live in a very conservative state in the state of Utah, and I normally don't have a beard that looks like I'm going to get on a plane to Syria, but I'm usually clean shaven, and I'm a pretty damn liberal person, right? But, you know, it's always been, I've had people call the cops on me flying drones maybe 3 times. Every time the police show up, and I, knock on wood, happen to have a Tango. So if it weren't for Trappy, I wouldn't be able to pull this off. But I have them wear the goggles, and I fly the drone. And I happen to have a Crossfire on this. And I even will fly out of the park. And they're blown away. They're just amazed. They're laughing. And there's this wonder and immediately diffuses the situation because they're like, wow, I get what this stuff is. And he's like, honestly, and every single time they're like, we don't have an ordinance yet. And I used to work for the city of Salt Lake City. And I know some people who are in the city council, and there's no laws or any ordinance for drones. Ironically, the park is the place I should be flying it out of anywhere. I had a woman get mad because she was trying to take photos of birds. And I felt bad, but it was like golden hour, and I had 2 batteries left. It's like, just let me finish these up. And she didn't understand. And it's unfortunately this idea that these are, we have a bad stigma about drones. It doesn't help that they're probably pretty loud in some ways. And if there's a way, it's going to sound pretty crazy, but if people are able to make a product that's able to have really good performance, but it's also really quiet, I think will be really appealing to a lot of people. And
all the micros are quite quiet. A lot of micros are quiet.
Of course, Kathy.
Yes. Go,
I'm
Kathy.
like, how can I talk? We need to have like a golden stick or something, a conch. No, but I think that, the bigger picture, and I've been thinking this for, almost 3 years now since I started getting into the whole, drone community, is that there needs to be some type of structured advocacy. Because the thing is that once a law is in place or once a city decides something, it's really hard to kind of reverse it. And I think, in a good or bad way, and this is a hobby. And so I think, you'll have a lot of people saying, well, it's just I do it on my spare time. I don't really have time to necessarily be an advocate, or how do we do that? And the thing is that unless we do something like that, ultimately everybody's going to get squeezed out. And no one's going to be able to fly, because you do have people, to your point, that are making these rules that have no idea what they're talking about. They don't know what they're doing. It just sounds really good, like, hey, we have an anti-drone policy, or hey, we're working on, keeping our community safe. And that sounds good, but they don't really know what they're talking about. And there's no one there representing, definitely not the FPV community. And if anyone is, it's because they want to make money, like AMA. Like, okay, well, no one can fly unless they fly on our field, and our field's going to cost you money. Or, unless it's to help DJI or, some type of hot, bigger group that's making a lot of money. But I mean, the bigger picture is that we kind of need to get involved, or we're just going to get squeezed out of everywhere. So
while I was in Casa being interviewed for my dangerous sand dune flying, I spoke to them and I said, look, I apologize if I'm coming here with like a negative context, because the last time I spoke to you guys was back in 2015 when Mark and I went out of our way because we could see, actually it was 2014, wasn't it? We could see this issue with regulation starting to crop up. So Mark and I both approached CASA and ACMA, which ACMA is like Australian FCC, to talk to them to become like a middle ground between the pilots and the organizations to try and help communication get better, because there was no communication. We got there, and their response was basically, fuck off, we know what we're doing. And the end result for me was, as soon as I started getting on the news channels and promoting this is back in 2014, before all the big competition wins, I got on the news channels of me flying in car parks, and I was getting threatened with $10,000 fines for dangerous and illegal flying. So this is nothing. Yeah,
but I don't think
all
that
sort of stuff was. So I spoke to these guys, and I even said to him, look, I am more than happy to work with you guys if you guys want an actual pilot to work with you guys to help look at this stuff and talk about it and go to meetings and that sort of stuff. And they're all like very politically, oh, yes. But at the end of the day, what I got from it was, fuck off, you don't know what you're talking about. Even though they were saying things like, oh, well, FPV is dangerous because you have bad situational awareness. And I said, what are you talking about? They said, well, you can't look behind you. And I said, yes, I can. And I showed them plenty of videos where we fly FPV, where I can spin a quad around 180 degrees and look behind me quicker than I can turn my fucking head. And I said, the difference is you guys don't know that because you have no fucking idea what it is that we do, but they don't care.
So my question is...
Go ahead. My bad. I do think the most I think the best analogy is kind of the beginning of Napster and Kazaa and all those types of music sharing platforms, and ultimately the hardware, which was the CD burner. And it's like, well, okay, the CD burner is enabling all sorts of potentially nefarious activities. Heck, I mean, people were copying video games, movies, everything, and they got DVD burners. But how do you outlaw that technology that has truly commercial purposes, right? They couldn't. Yeah. They didn't. So, and the only way to really, and if you think about it, I coincidentally happened to work in the music industry for years. The money and the model changed to streaming. There was a technological solution that changed it and pushed things forward in a way. And I think that FPV will be like that. And maybe it means that we just have to use GPS that works with a specific type of air traffic control system. And who knows? Maybe TBS is working on it. Maybe Immersion's working on it. Unfortunately, because of how this industry works, we'll probably never know, right? But it'll have to be some sort of technological solution, I think, that will be able to kind of mitigate those things. Because, man, like, there's a company called Dedrone, for example, and they've raised like $28 million in like Series B funding. They make a radar system essentially that detects and profiles different types of drones, and they're trying to now they can detect Spectrum, FlySky, and FrSky, and they're currently trying to work on Crossfire, but they can do all the DJI drones. And their solution, the basic solution, is like $10,000 or something, and it'll say when there's a drone within a certain vicinity. And I think it's like 1 square mile, not very long. The big solution, $165,000, and it happens to identify where the pilot is and the drone in real time. And that's maybe like half a square mile. And they sell these to the San Francisco Pride Parade, prisons, airports are buying this up like crazy, military bases, because what's happening is, not to sound like, again, like a crazy person or hyperbolic, but like ISIS was modifying Phantom drones to take out, Abrams tanks that we gave the Iraqi military. So when you hear about that and that's on the news, it does create this hysteria. And if you can find, just like the CD burner, like this technology will always be available to, oil and gas or police, whatever. It's too good to not use. But how do you make it so that people don't abuse it in a certain way? And unfortunately, there is overregulation, and I don't know. I think you guys nailed it.
So I mean, it doesn't matter what we do; that equipment will always be abused in some way, shape, or form, just like anything else. It's the intent of the person, and like you were talking about the military base and the new systems. I already know personally that there's systems that we have in place for systems like Crossfire and for FrSky and FlySky and signal jammers and things like that, and that they can detect those things. The problem becomes not so much the fact that people are flying over military bases, which they do happen, but the fact of the matter is that it's because of the fact that there isn't enough understanding about the information. So my real question is, when are we sending Jesse Perkins to Capitol Hill and setting up a race course in Congress and giving them all FPV goggles so they can see what it is that, is really the threat? I mean, we get to a point where we've got to do something as a community to release information to show the truth about it.
But here's the sad truth of the matter with that, Joe. When's that going to happen? Never. Why is it not going to happen? Because there's no money in it for them.
Exactly. But
that's the problem.
But we can get fines and they can charge in licenses and everything else. It's like now I've got to spend 3 hours to drive to the local place to take a test, and there we go. So,
well, I think they're really like anything. I mean, the thing I was listening to a podcast and the other day, and they were talking about something else, but they said, there's never like that moment where the whole world agrees on something. There's never just this like one split second where the whole world thinks, you know what, not letting certain people into certain restaurants is a bad idea. It's something where it's like, okay, well, let's talk about, race issues and stuff like that, or let's talk about women voting. Like, it's not like everybody woke up one day and they're like, it'd be great if women vote. It was something that just takes time to do. And I think honestly, I know a while ago there was a talk of doing like a pilot union or league or something like that, and I was asked about it or to kind of participate in that, and it kind of just fizzled out. But honestly, there needs to be something like that, and it needs to kind of start in, you know, a grassroots thing. So like Joe, what you're saying, it's like, okay, well, you know, I pay taxes, you know, my money goes towards these parks and towards these different lands and, you know, these streets. And it's like, well, why can, you know, somebody do their hobby in this park? And it's really annoying the shit out of me, but I can't do my hobby because, you know what? I don't want to sit here and have a soccer ball hit me in the head, which has happened, you know, and that's super annoying. But apparently mine that does nothing, you know, is going to potentially hurt someone, and it's not fair that all of our money, you know, is going towards the same base and we can't use it. So I think really it's more of like a grassroots thing where like in your community and in your town, it's about kind of going and saying, hey, what are we going to do about this? Because I need to be able to fly, you know, I want to be able to do what I want to do, and I should be able to because my money goes towards it too. And then as more communities do that, then we'll kind of hopefully see more of a change, and it's more like STEAM and STEM projects where kids are getting involved and like the youth is kind of coming up, and when they're able to vote, then, you know, it's a really kind of a bigger project. But there's none of that really happening now. And, you know, as to what I was saying before, essentially everyone's getting kind of squeezed out because the thing is that drone technology in general and FPV are going to be two separate things. And it doesn't really matter what they're going to use for, like, you know, being able to do like crop, you know, views and be able to look at wind turbines and be able to like do military technology. That doesn't really have anything to do with us, you know, because ultimately they're not going to include FPV in that legal system because they don't even care, because we're not caring enough to represent ourselves to our local government and people. So I think we need to do that first, and then, you know, kind of look at the bigger picture of Capitol Hill and whatnot. But, you know, if no one's really doing anything, then it doesn't really, you know, it's not really going to matter. So,
well, I just think it's a matter of time, and I think as yep, yep, not a problem. I think as we progress in this, so we're going to see the companies respond with either products that will conform, or we're going to see more pilots raising up. And when we do that, we're going to find that those organizations are going to be created. But it's going to take somebody like Chad to lead the pack, to say, you know, I'm a member of this association, you should be too, because this is an advocacy for us as FPV pilots. Until that organization happens, I don't think we're gonna have a voice at all. So
yeah. Well, I mean, but it could be something that like we can just say, hey, right now we're going to create that group, and then everybody in this chat is just going to start it, you know. But I don't think like Chad, I don't think that any one person is going to just stand up and say, because if they haven't done it already, I don't know that.
I think a lot of people, like generally speaking, people are sheep. They're waiting for someone else to do it. They're like, and I when Steele and I got back together and flew around, there were people messaging me going, "Oh, I can't wait for you to make FPV, like fix FPV and make it great again, like the whole Trump thing." And I'm like, "What do you expect us to do? I don't understand." So people put a lot of expectation on a few amount of people, and it's the people as a whole that make the difference, not a few people. That's how you make something great.
Right, but see, that's why I said that as far as you standing up and doing it, because, you know, just using you as an example is because there are that many sheep out there, or people that won't take the limelight or the center stage. So it's going to take somebody that's willing to put in that energy and effort, and the people will stand behind them, but it's going to take that person to do so. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the entire point of that.
The whole regulations thing that I see is a lot of this regulation that looks really stupid is based on fear, and fear comes from an unknown subject. If you don't understand something, the first reaction is usually fear. Like, I fly full-scale sailplanes, and people say to me, wow, it doesn't have an engine. That must be dangerous. Like, no, it's because you don't understand it. And it's the same thing. Drones have had such a cursed description because of what happens in the military with them, that any regulation is based on, well, first of all, the media with its fear, then going into the people that promote that fear, and then the government follow that fear. And at the moment, drones still, in the whole of humankind, are a niche industry. Like, why don't you fear a basketball? Because everyone knows what a basketball is. If you went out to an Amazon tribe and gave an Amazon tribesman and threw a basketball at them, they'd run away. They wouldn't catch it. Why? Because they don't understand what it is. Same thing happens with drones. Now, basketballs, everyone knows what it is. Now, give it 10 years and you'll probably have a drone in nearly every single household. People will understand them, and we won't have this fear, which is slowly happening. People have seen that. When back in 2015,
Walmart.
Yeah, but back in 2015, every time you went to a park, people were accusing you of spying. That kind of never happens anymore, because people are no longer fearful of that. But there's still a stigma attached with drones, and over time, that will disappear. That's the hurdle that we need to get over with, to get rid of that fear because of the lack of understanding of what drones are. Regardless of what we do as pilots, we just need more people involved in it to get rid of that stigma. Now, I don't want to change the subject too much, but I've been holding on the chat here. David D. Tweller said, check out Bruno Vassal, glider pilot on YouTube from Salt Lake City. Tell me how low-flying glider mountain passes is less dangerous than drones. Okay, so I'm a sailplane pilot, and I also know Bruno very, very well. So he's a YouTuber. He flies gliders in the mountains, and he does low passes and so forth. Here's the difference, David. What you need to understand is there's two different things. There's danger and regulation. They are not the same. They are two completely separate entities. And what we're talking about is regulation, not safety. Regulation and danger, they're two completely different things. Now, the reason why Bruno can do that is because there's extremely old regulation allowing him to do that. Now, I don't want to talk about the FAA regulation, but over here in Australia, as you guys are most aware, full-scale aircraft can't go below 500 feet unless they get express permission from the airspace, the tower that they're flying in, or they're coming in for landing. Now, gliders are different. Gliders can go below 500 feet at any point in time they want because they don't have an engine to get themselves back up again. So every landing that a glider does is technically an emergency landing. So that makes gliders exempt. They're allowed to go low, and they have been able to ever since regulation came in place. That's why he can do it. And as far as you're talking about, I totally agree with you. How is that less dangerous than us flying drones? Totally agree with you, but don't let yourself get caught up trying to think that regulation and safety are the same thing. Regulation is trying to help safety, but regulation is not safety. They're two different things.
Yeah, but that's kind of the purpose of the regulation, is for safety. But that, again, we get back to the fact that they don't understand it. I mean, that's kind of the challenge, or the hurdle that we're dealing with right now. And, I mean, simply put, if you read the latest announcement through the FCC, that's kind of like getting back on the topic of this new announcement or whatever. Their public notice basically states that they can't even retailers can't even sell the items that are in violation because they're not Part 15 compliant. So now you're looking at every drone that is out there that's being sold by companies like even Walmart. Walmart.com has them all over their website. Well, now that those have become illegal for them to even sell or even keep listed, I'm sure that Walmart's going to fight back, or some major corporation's going to fight back, because you're talking about $19,000 a day in fines for even advertising to sell these products.
You're assuming that the profit margin from that product line is big enough to worry about, which I would argue is probably not.
Do you think they're going to just pull them off the shelves, or do you think that?
Well, I mean,
Sorry, a lot of companies, because I'm like, this is the realm that I know a lot about, is that a lot of times companies, especially bigger companies, will have some type of deal with the company that they bought the product from, that if they don't sell it, that they can send it back. So they may have some of those in place where it really doesn't matter to them if they, if anything happens or not, because they may have a contract with the company, like say Air Hogs or whatever it may be, to say, hey, if we buy such amount of product but it doesn't sell, then we can send it back to you, or whatever it may be. So I mean, it would really depend on if what they're making off of it is going to be worth taking legal action, which I don't think that they care. I think they'll just sell something else.
Well, it's amazing to me that they can put these regulations about these transmitters, whatever, out there, but yet you can go and buy a model rocket from Estes, which is a hobby company, and you can literally buy those in any Hobby Lobby, which is a hobby store here in the States. But you can buy a model rocket that has an ignition and it lights a little cell that will shoot this thing up into the atmosphere. Okay, so what is to say that this model rocket now needs a license because of the fact that we're crossing airspace from 400 feet and going beyond that, but there's no regulations on that?
Yeah. Well, you're comparing FCC and FAA, which are two completely different organizations.
Well, yes, absolutely. But you can put a transmitter on a model rocket. Still the point.
Oh yeah, but you can't buy it
now.
Yeah.
But some companies are actually putting disclaimers.
Here's the problem, though. Make all the rules you want, they physically can't stop what comes in from China. All it's doing is not fixing anything. All it's doing is just changing where people buy their products. And when you look at like people flying and people like as a community, like the FPV community, we like to show off what we're doing. So we're very big on filming it and showing it to the world, which makes it very easy for the government organizations to go, aha, caught you. What I see happening with all of this flying and so forth is people are still going to do it. The difference is that they're just going to do it in a more secretive way. They're going to start up secret YouTube channels, and they're going to do it so that they're not traceable. It's going to be no different to a lot of the other situations where they're just going to go, you know what, screw it, come and find me, because they know that the likelihood of being caught is very, very low.
Yeah, but secret YouTube channels aren't going to make money, and people are going to get. You can show your buddies these videos or whatever, but it's the mainstream part of it.
No, I'm not talking about. I'm talking about people putting up YouTube channels that are public, but you can't trace them.
Yeah, you can, but yes, I get that. I get that whole factor of the fact that anonymous YouTube channels or whatever, and people are going to become guerrillas or anarchists when it comes to all these policies or whatever. But it's going to take that. It's going to take us standing up as a community and basically not accepting that and continuing to. It's kind of like the legalization of marijuana. You look at all of that in the regulation. It takes the people to come together and finally say, yeah, okay, I'd like to smoke a joint and fucking vote on that. Well, excuse my French, but you get my point. It's like enough people come together and they say, yes, we want this in our life, or we want to be able to do this or whatever. That again becomes what's important, and until we do that, it's not going to matter. So,
yeah.
I think the thing is that, like with marijuana and whatever else, it's like you have a lot of people that are into it, and then you have a lot of money behind it of people that want it to be available, and you don't really.
It's also an industry that the government can get a lot of money out of by licensing.
Well, the same thing with drones, though. Think about how much money we spend.
I know, but compared to other things, like no if you ever hear in the news, like people are regulating drones, and no general public person is ever going to be like, how dare they take people's drones away? That's outrageous. It's really like probably never really going to happen unless again we kind of get together and say, hey guys, and I know that earlier it was brought up that, you know, them being noisy, and you know, for me, it being noisy has helped more than hindered, because generally a lot of people ask me still, like, you know, that's to spy on people, and why are you spying on me? And I'm just like, if you can't hear that shit, I can't help you. You know, it's so loud.
Yeah, even a tiny whoop is.
Yeah, I'm just like, if you can't hear that and you think that I'm getting so close to spy on you, then I can't fucking help you with that, you know. So it kind of helps me more than not. But you know, I just think that ultimately it's just going to take, you know, again, just really people in their own communities just trying to talk about it and going to schools and getting, you know, the community together. And the thing is that I don't know if we have enough people that are really going to be, you know, committed to doing that. And I know whenever I've brought it up, no one's ever been like, yeah, let's just do that. And you know, I think our best case scenario for FPV is going to be like skateboarding. That one day, I know like skateboarding, you know, was really kind of a nuisance thing, you know, and everyone put up these like, you can't skateboard around here signs, you know, and it got really obnoxious. And then you had like Tony Hawk and you know, X Games, and it got popular. And now it's not uncommon to be able to find a skateboarding park, you know, in a park. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like for us, the best case scenario is to be able to, you know, be in a place where we can at least say, we want space in the space, you know, to be able to do this. But no one is really kind of, you know, maybe there are people in the community doing this, but, you know, it's no one's really kind of speaking up, and it takes people. And I don't think
what I was saying about Chad.
So Chad for president.
Well, you know, I mean, I'm not really trying to put him in that light, but I mean, it comes to a point where somebody that is
the FAA is killing us. I'm telling you, everyone now, I know how to fix it. I'm going to build a wall, and I'm going to make the FAA pay for it.
Oh yeah, I'll vote for you.
Yeah, I went there. Yeah,
you're going to make us great again.
Wait,
but you know what? I mean, even if Chad makes FPV great again, and even if he grabs it by the prop, it just comes down to the fact that no matter what, we have to make sure that somebody does speak up for us in that sense. And I think that, you know, the random everyday Joe is going to say something about the fact that, you know, he just bought his kid a drone at Walmart, and now it's a waste of money because the kid can't fly it. I mean, that's going to be something that somebody's going to say something about. And it comes down to, I'm not going to be the only guy that's going to be upset about it or whatever, but I mean, it's like that at that point, we're going to be buying all this stuff from China, and then we're going to get tickets or fines written or whatever. It's going to come to a head. It's going to come to a point where we go, enough's enough. But
I don't know if this is changing the subject somewhat. Kind of still on subject, but I'm reading the comments, and people are talking about sort of like industry and how industry moves things, and people are talking about, okay, what about not necessarily the manufacturers, but the people, the pilots and so forth that are making a living within the community, trying to sort of legitimize this as a... I don't think people realize, like, if you're like a YouTube pilot, people talking about making money in YouTube, it's unless you've got 1 million subscribers and you're getting like a couple of 100,000, half a million views per week, you're not making enough on YouTube alone to actually make money. Now, you could say, okay, well, it's growing, but here's something interesting that I did. A couple of weeks ago. I like to keep an eye on this. So wait, let's go, for example, sorry, I should have loaded this up.
Look at some Google Trends.
Yep. So
interesting, those things.
I'm not even looking at this as something really simple. So for example, I remember back early days of Rotor Riot when we had, 70,000 subscribers, 60,000 subscribers. We built up our subscriber list pretty quick until we got to just under 100, and things sort of tapered off after that. And I believe that's because we'd already captured the majority of the market. And you can look at subscribers, but I mean, you look when you've got 200,000 subscribers, but only 10% of them are actually watching your videos. The subscriber list in my mind becomes pretty useless. So I look at actual views over long term. Now, I remember back in Rotor Riot 2016, we were trying to aim for like 25,000 odd views in the first week or two. And you want to build on that, of course, because you want to get more views. So let's look at Rotor Riot at the number of views. You've got, going back from the videos, you got 17, 5.7, 18, 26, 27, 17, 9.4, 37, 20, 8.2, 20, 17, 8.7, 22, 16, 10, 29. So I look at that and I go, the actual viewership of the show hasn't changed in 1 to 2 years. And that shows me that the active group that are involved in the YouTube community hasn't grown. There have been people that have gone in, but there are people that come out. So we can go, okay, well, let's look at like Mr. Steele. Steele's probably the biggest YouTuber in the quad community. So he's got 146,000 subscribers. So let's look at his videos. We got 16, 23, 23, 18, 21, 14, 14, 20, 27, 20, 22, 19, 49, 9.9, 11, 13, 18. Now, I'll grant that there are the odd video through there where you might get 100,000 or 200,000 views, but those views right there is not something that you can survive on YouTube. These people and these companies survive on selling products and putting products with their names on it. That's where they make it. YouTube is it's pocket change. So don't fool yourselves into thinking that it's this big, high-profile business. Just because you see Casey Neistat there, have a look at the number of views and also have a look at all the deals that he's doing behind the scenes as well. It's not that simple. So, yeah, anyway.
It all becomes about the sponsorship, doesn't it?
Chad, spend your millions that you make off of YouTube on this and, pioneer the way with your lawyer team.
Well, no, I don't want to do that because, I mean, I'm trying to work out what color my second Ferrari is going to be.
Man, I thought you were going with the Lambo.
He's going with the Tesla. Everyone knows their best. Right now, I just did a Google trend search for drone racing. And that's quite interesting. It's dropped off over the last year, basically. There's a big peak around, looks like the start of 2016. I'm guessing that was around the World Drone Prix.
Yeah.
And then it's sort of been a little bit up, a little bit down, a little bit up, but the actual trend is slightly down at the moment, which is quite interesting. Interest by region, Australia and New Zealand are ahead of the US as well. There you go.
Yeah.
Chad needs to take his clothes off more often.
Yeah, we need some more props.
Okay, everyone heard that there. Kathleen said that. So you can never complain when I'm in the same house as you and take my clothes off like you normally do.
Wait a minute. Oh, when you take your clothes off in my house?
Yeah.
I'm not I don't even subscribe to you.
Yeah.
I'm talking about your subscribers. I can't see the chat. Is that only you, chat? Are you in control of the chat, or do I need
do you want to read the chat, do you?
Do I?
I don't know, do you?
Are they saying... Are they not?
You always think it's about you.
Well, you're saying it like, I don't know, you may not want to read the chat.
Well, that's because I like to make you nervous. So if you want to read the chat, go to my YouTube channel and click on my video, turn the sound down.
That whole deal?
Yeah. So, yeah, look, at the end of the day, guys, it's not this big money-making business. There are a few that can get by. They are certainly not becoming super rich. And it's a long-term goal that may not work out. So don't assume that there's so many people out there that have assumed that Rotor Riot pilots were and are getting this massive amount. No, I don't really want to talk about figures, but if I told you how much money I'd made in the drone racing industry, most of you people have probably made a lot more than me. So I'm just reading. Let's read it. We'll read through. If you guys have got any specific questions or comments, now's the time to put it up, and we'll we'll talk with you guys for a little bit before we eventually get off the air, because we've been talking now for coming up to 1.5 hours. And I don't want this.
Someone asked, give us some numbers. What's 25,000 views get you on YouTube, Dennis? Not much. About $5 maybe, if you're lucky.
Yeah.
Over a period of time. That's if you can still monetize your channel. I can't anymore because I don't have 4,000 hours of view time per year.
What we need to do is send a tiny whoop to PewDiePie. I'm telling you.
You know what would happen there? PewDiePie would make a shitload of money off it, and we would never benefit from it.
Yeah, but everybody would go out and buy drones. Like, I mean,
they already did that. Ruined the hobby. Remember?
Yeah.
Yeah, but again, it comes down to
There we go. We got Bruce online. He said 25,000 views gets you about $2.50. That's in New Zealand.
That's New Zealand money too. So that's like
like 30 cents Australian.
It's like
30 cents Australian, and that's about 5 cents. Oh no, that's like less than a penny American.
That's right. A nickel.
I mean, would you guys, I guess, would people that are watching this, I mean, if there was some type of, if somebody came out with some type of thing like, hey, this is how you can contact someone, in your local government, or hey, these are steps you could do to, help your own community to fly there, would you guys actually do it, or would everybody just not do it? Because I think that's, people can get together and take some time to try to help with that, but if no one really does it, then it's not really gonna matter.
What about maybe like a drone pilot association where you get a drone pilot license?
Advocacy group.
Well,
yeah,
I think
maybe like $25 a year you get a drone license, and that pays for that advocacy.
Well, that's what Mark and I were actually trying to advocate over here in Australia with ACMA, which is Australia's version of the FCC. Because over here in Australia, because our ham operator license is so antiquated and haven't kept up with the rest of the world, you only have to get a standard ham license over in America to fly FPV. But because of a few areas in the rulings that Australia hasn't caught up with the rest of the world, we have to get an advanced ham. And the difference between a standard ham and an advanced ham is actually quite significant in time and money spent to get it. Yes, you can still get it, but it's getting pretty full on. And over here in Australia, the people are just like, why the fuck should I bother when I know the likelihood of getting caught is so bloody low? Go fuck your hat. I'm just going to go and fly anyway. Now, Mark and I were trying to talk to these guys saying, why don't you guys make us an FPV specific license that you can then charge for, get money from, and then keep everyone happy. And in this license, they're learning specifically the stuff that they need to for FPV. And they totally ignored us. They didn't even respond to us.
Yeah,
I think the AMA is exactly that association, but they don't have specific for FPV. But we'll see if the AMA actually stands up for that, because here we have an organization that's supposed to be addressing these issues for us, and that people are pay for a membership for that reason, but yet they address the whole situation with the Part 15 compliance. So in the future, is it going to be that the drone companies are going to have Part 15 compliant equipment, or is it going to be the fact that we're going to have those regulations changed?
But I don't know if the AMA, if it benefits the AMA to make, I don't know. To me and what I've experienced, it's more like, okay, you need to pay this fee and then you can fly on our field because you really can't fly anywhere else. I don't know if their goal is to make it so that we could just go to the park and fly. It's like, well, you can pay money to fly where
it's not really in their interest to let you fly wherever. They want you to fly in the area where they're going to make money.
To them, it's actually, they'll make more money the more regulation, because then people will be forced to fly in their fields because people won't have anywhere else to legally fly if they want to do it legally. So I don't know if it's
just a quick answer to a question. Boots and Shoes said, so no more drone videos from you, Chad? ? No, you'll still get drone videos from me. I just need to be a little bit more careful what I do. It's very, very restrictive. I'm kind of at the point where I'm just like, I don't fucking care. I do what I'm passionate about, and I think that this is a fucking joke. I regularly go to America, so maybe I'll just do more videos in America as a middle finger to Casa.
You could.
Or because you want to spend time with me.
Or of course, you could just say all of your videos are shot in America. Morton Island, no, that was America, wasn't it?
Yeah.
We'd all talk in American accents on all your videos.
Morton Island, no, that was New York.
Yeah, that was like
Hawaii. But I mean, we were talking about
Joe, Dizzy FPV made a good point. Newbie Drone sent Casey Neistat an Acro B goggles and a Tyrannus. So if there's someone that's going to be big, I'm waiting for that massive influx of new pilots.
Yeah, and that might happen, but again, we're talking about the AMA and the fact that they're supposed to be a voice for us. I mean, on their website it says the voice of its membership, providing liaison with the FAA, the FCC, and other government agencies. So let's see what you got, AMA. This is my personal challenge to you. Step up and do something about this latest FCC announcement. I mean, this is ridiculous.
Do4 FPV said, "Are you mad about the Martian 4?" I'm guessing that's the Reverb clone. Those Chinese cloners are going to do that no matter what we do. We can't stop that. All I can do is educate the people that support that and think that the innovating companies are ripping them off about the realities of the situation. If they don't want to listen, then that's their problem. I don't really care, because if those people are going to buy that and then claim that other people are ripping, the innovators are ripping people off, then they were never going to support the innovators in the first place. So no, I'm not mad. All I can do is educate you. And if you still feel the same way buying that product and you're going to complain after you've been educated, so be it. So just know who you're supporting. Just if you want to be that way and not support people, that's fine. Just know that you're not supporting the future of this community, and we are a small community.
I still say that you guys should come out with certified, some organization for certified genuine products.
Bruce said, "I think we've reached peak regulation for drones. The lack of fatalities and major property damage will strengthen the case for loser regs." I totally agree with you that there is no numbers to support the regulation. And up to this point, I believe that regulation, the crappy regulation, has been put in based on fear because of the lack of knowledge. What I see happening in the future is the regulation continuing more on politics to lean towards those with a vested interest and those with more money. It's no longer about safety. It'll be about who can pay the most to own that airspace. And that's the big problem. And that's an area that we can't win. We never will win, because we can't fight that.
The thing is that what the FPV community needs is a good marketing person, because ultimately there are so many great stories which we've heard, like when you guys were doing the live stream about depression. There's a lot of people, former military people, that are being helped with PTSD and things like that through FPV. There's a lot of kids that are getting involved with different maker projects and STEM and STEAM projects. And the thing is that people never hear about that, because no one here is ever pushing that to say, hey, look at all these wonderful stories about what FPV and drones do within this community. It's just all about we're gonna power loop a bridge, and that's kind of it, and that's what's going to get the headlines. But what we really need is are people talking about all of the amazing positive stories that are out there, and people to kind of really advocate for the hobby. I don't think the AMA will ever do that. I think that that's going to be something that that we have to do. And I think that it just takes, you know, people within the community that are passionate, just like it has with every other thing in the world, you know, just people that kind of care to stand up and say something for it. And, you know, if you just kind of want to not do that and you just want to go in the park and fly and do your thing after work, you know, your time's just going to be limited, because at some point you're not going to be allowed anywhere. And until people get a more positive view of what we do, they're not going to give a shit if we can fly in the park or not, or if our rights get taken away or not. So, you know, I think nothing's going to change unless we change it. So I think that we need to change something we're doing to make it better for ourselves. Otherwise, it's never going to go in the right direction for us, really. So
I totally agree with you. I think that, you know, we're the downfall of it, to be honest. And I hate to put that on us, but as a community, things like bridge dives are exactly why the fact that it's being misunderstood and misrepresented. The fact of the matter is that when Intel does a drone expo or does something that, you know, has a bunch of drones and they do something really cool, like you know, animated fireworks using LEDs and drones, that gets great press. But then, you know, when somebody dives an airplane and it's all over the news, that gets bad press. Well, then we don't hear enough good stories, as you were saying, about the fact that, you know, these little projects that schools are doing with children and teaching them about electronics and what have you. But
there's a reason, because good stories don't sell.
Right. So it's that bad media that's, you know, screwing us in the end.
Here in Australia, many years ago, there was a news outlet that they decided they were only going to talk about positive news. So it was a positive news station. It went out of business because no one watched it. No one cares about the good stuff. People want controversy. They want all that sort of stuff. And that's the media are only feeding us what we want. We've got ourselves to blame for that.
There's still a little newspaper down near Lismore called The Good News, which is all this hippie, happy stories and stuff. It's hilarious, actually. Yeah. It's really cute. But that's that community. I just wanted to say something about, you know, the stuff with Intel and those drones, and it was just making me think, and it reminded me that even though the hobby's a lot better known today than it was, say, 3 or 4 years ago, and there's a lot more people in it, it's a lot bigger than it was, we're still tiny, insignificant part of the whole drone world. And I still get my non-flying friends and relatives and things, they send me the stuff that goes around in the viral media of those big clouds of drones or something. It's never FPV racing. It's nothing to do with the hobby 90% of the time. So we need to just bear in mind from this point of view of making advocacy groups, and, you know, I think we're under the impression that we're a lot bigger than we actually are.
No.
And
we're a bunch of nerds flying in the park, and we got more promotion than we probably deserved.
Yeah, early on. Well, and so that's perspective for how much weight we actually carry when we try and advocate for things and regulation and stuff. Like, we're like 2% compared to the 98% of bantam flyers and other stuff in the recreational drone space. And that's why CASA have been so happy to ignore us and useless over the years. It's a shame, but that's the reality of it.
Well, I think that might be true there, but I think that it's a lot bigger here than you guys are giving it credit for. Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's less pilots and people in the world, but I think that there's a majority of people that own drones, from, you know, famous people to not famous people that are
drones
just
in general,
really getting into it.
Yeah, drones in general for sure, but I'm talking about FPV, about the hobby.
FPV is a very, very niche community. Yeah. There's a lot of people. You've got the consumer market who want plug and play. They're the ones that are buying the DJI style of drones, and that's a big area. But that's not us. That's someone completely different. We're the hobbyists that like to bicker about which ESC is the best ESC, and we want to tune things, and we love fiddling. The issue is that the majority of the population don't care about that. It's kind of like owning a computer and the people that like Mark who like to code stuff and they like to change stuff. That like most of the people don't want that. They're not interested in that shit. They hate that.
Tinkering. See.
Well, sure, but okay. So think about Fat Shark, for example. Okay, they're obviously a company that spent a lot of money into designing these goggles for the consumer market, and now with the FCC's latest, the products that their company depends on is now been restricted. I mean, that I can't see them taking it laying down.
Well, but then also nothing's really happening. So I think
I'm
gonna.
What do you mean nothing's happening?
Well, I mean,
we're a community that we can't agree on which flight controller is shit and which flight controller is good. We are bickering over the smallest items. Like we are a small version of like the American politics where everyone's like, rah! Instead of actually getting together and actually doing something about it.
I think
until we get together as a group, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I think part of it is really, at the end of the day, everybody that's in this chat, everybody that's listening, everybody that's part of the community, at the end of the day, they want to fly. And I think that instead of really looking at, again, it's really about looking at a big picture of what to do. And I mean that, the companies, I haven't seen, maybe I'm wrong, I haven't seen any FPV specific companies work towards advocacy of being able to fly in parks or being able to fly wherever. I haven't seen that. Maybe they're doing something about it, but I don't feel like they are now. And if they haven't been already, well, all of these...
Well, I'm not necessarily saying flying in parks or whatever. I'm talking about like the FCC's announcement that they made the other day about no websites are supposed to be able to sell anything that has a VTX, basically, that's not FCC Part 15 compliant. They can't advertise them. They can't sell them without, the proper situation. And I've already seen websites put up that they cannot sell them to people without a ham operator's license, like put disclaimers on their websites or whatever.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, in general, I think it's going to be, I don't...
It's a lot of money for the companies to get those parts FCC compliant.
Yeah.
Well, they won't.
That's what I'm saying. They won't do it because of the fact that it costs a lot of money.
No, it's just it's physically not possible for most of that stuff. That's
what do you mean
problem.
it's physically impossible?
Because they cannot comply for a lot of that stuff. It's just physically cannot comply. That's the problem.
Got you.
So you want something that like the FC, like Fat Shark, for example, makes an FCC compliant VTX. I don't know if they still sell it, but there's things like, for example, the antenna is soldered to the board, so you can't change the antenna because you can't change the gain of the antenna. That makes it compliant. So little things like that. It starts like I'm not fully into the whole nitty gritty of the compliance of what you guys are going through there, but from what I've seen, the big problem is a lot of these companies physically can't make them compliant to the specifications that the FCC is asking for. So,
well, but I don't think that's true because of the fact that they can take out the illegal bands or the illegal channels, which some of the companies already have on the VTXs, and they have soldered antennas on the VTXs, like let's say the Tiny Whoop 900 FX, or I'm sorry, the FX 900 TW. It's the Tiny Whoop camera that they've got with VTX. It's 25 milliwatt fixed antenna, and I mean, I don't know how that's not compliant because it doesn't have the channels that are illegal. They're only the 37 channels that are legal in the United States. So,
well, something like that may come down to the problem that you were talking about to make it FCC compliant. There's not enough sales there to make it worthwhile.
What do you mean there's not enough sales to make it worthwhile?
to go through proper FCC compliance and that sort of stuff is actually quite a long time and a decent amount of money. It's not a small
no,
process.
I get it. It's not for the company, but there are companies out there. I know TBS has Part 15 compliant stuff as well, and it's possible for the companies to do that. Do I see all the do I see Crazy Pony doing it? No, not for 1 second. But do I think that we'll see the same thing that we had with GoPro versus RunCam 3, where RunCam 3 was taken off the market? Absolutely. I don't think that those products will be allowed into the country at that point. I think that, unless they're specifically for ham operating or ham radio, and I think that's part of the issue is maybe the fact that ham radio guys don't like the VTXs on their frequencies.
I would probably agree with what Crash RC just said. He said there are currently 2 FCC compliant VTXs.
From whom?
Tramp and a Unify, perhaps.
Well, yeah, we can start getting very technical. I don't think we should comment any more on that. If we're going to comment on that, we would need some technical guys in here. Otherwise, we're just going to be guesstimating and that sort of stuff. So.
Yeah.
Well,
here,
I want to do and see if there's a sticker on it. And that's
I do want to do a quick shout out. I know John Jordan in there has been hinting a couple of times there. John Jordan, he did this really cool paint up of a Tyrannus case for me, which is all kind of cool. Did one for Sean at there as well. So cool. He was nice enough to he does a really good job actually. I did this nice weathered look. So I've got it in my sweet little hands, John, and I do intend on installing the radio gear in the next week or so.
Are we showing off toys?
Yeah.
Show off this. Mine's bigger than yours.
Crash RC, I agree with you on that last comment, but I'm just not going to get into it. the hate starts coming in. There we go. Unify is not FCC certified for license-free operation.
I thought you were going there.
Yeah. As a lot of them aren't. Let's change subjects.
Yeah.
No hate.
Look,
Okay.
9 inches
One or
7
two.
inch.
Yeah. 1 or 2 more questions there, guys. And then we might wrap this up because we've been talking now for 2 hours. And I said we're only going to do an hour.
Yeah.
And we lost Bobby as well.
Bobby did say that he had
to
go at some point in time. So
yeah, I got to go too. I got a quad that I got to build. I've been putting it off. So
yeah,
I love this frame, but I haven't had time to fly it.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll do another 5 or 10 minutes, just quickly answering all your questions on sort of stuff. One thing before we actually went live was actually Joe, you actually brought a good point up about you were asking me, can I run 6S on the hype trains? And my response was voltage. So long as you've got certain limits, but generally speaking, there is no limitation on voltage. If you want to run 6S, just because it says you can't run 6S doesn't mean you can't. Heat is what kills motors. So it all comes down to how you can run 6S on a 4S only capable motor if you deprop it and you don't work it as hard. And then you were asking Mary various things, and the reason why I want to bring this up is because I think this is an important point. You were saying how big an ESC do I need to go to move over to 6S? And my response was, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to be that guy that wants insane speed and power, or are you trying to do 6S properly? So if you're going for some kind of speed record, then yes, you're going to need to beef everything up. But if you're trying to do it, if you're trying to do it properly, you could get away with a smaller amp draw ESC because things will get more efficient. That's the reason why you should be going to 6S for more efficiency. But if you want to go for more speed, then you're going to have to go bigger. But all this generalization that you're going to need a bigger ESC for 6S is actually incorrect. If you're just going to for the increased efficiency of 6S, you can go for a smaller ESC.
Well, yeah, but I guess to further explain my question, I want to take this frame, my Candy Quad Felon, I want to take this and make it go as fast as possible using the hype trains pushed to the limit was kind of where I was going with it. And, I mean, I've got a 35 amp ESC that I just picked up to do, just to kind of see what I can do. And I got to admit, I've caught that one on fire twice and it's still great. Just doing stupid stuff with it. But, I mean, that's kind of the thing. I'm kind of going to push this one to the limits and whatever and see how fast I can make this frame go. So I was just kind of, I know I'm going to puff a battery. I got the 6S battery for free or whatever, but I just want to see if I can push these, this 2450 kV motors and see what I can pull out of them. So,
well, it all comes down to heat. If you're not, keep an eye on temperatures. And like I said at the start, just don't be that fool that does a punch out on the very first flight. Bring it up gradually and compare heat, and the motors will tell you when they're not liking it.
Yeah, and as I told you, I probably won't punch out on the first one now, but I'm that guy that usually would. So
yeah.
Now.
Yeah. Well, I was one of the first people to actually run 6S in a repeatable manner back in, 2014? Like, people have said to me, "Oh, do you ever fly 6S?" I think I was one of the first people to actually do it on mini quads. And yeah, I did that. I didn't have anything to start off with. So I literally would sit there spinning the motors on the ground, stop it, test the motors. Then I'd get up to a point where it's almost hovering, stop it, test the motors for heat. Then hover, test the motors for heat. Then fly around, cruise around, slowly pick it up. The motors will tell you as you slowly build up that you start pushing them a little bit harder when they're not liking it.
Yeah. And see, I got this frame and it's a one-piece frame, and for me, it was like, I really wanted to see if I could push that. The other frames that I had, I was kind of afraid of whether they were going to withstand it or hold up to it. So I was like, all right, this one's just a solid small frame that's really light. So I wanted to just push that envelope because I'm always a speed demon. So yeah, I thought about how ridiculous I could go with it, and they don't make a 10S battery for a drone like that size.
Yeah, I got some interesting new products coming, which hopefully will be at my door on Monday, which I can't wait to try. Change things up a little bit, which would be kind of fun. Okay, so you guys have got like 1 minute to come up with any important questions, and then we're going to get out of here because all the people here are slowly getting, that you can see they're getting tired faces after only 2 hours. God, you guys are such lightweights these days. Yeah, anyone got any
stuff to flash and stuff to fly.
Has anyone got any questions for Kathleen?
When's she coming back to Queensland, says Dizzy?
I don't know. Maybe like spring. Chad's I'm going on vacation here in California in August, and Chad's gonna be coming out for that, I think, if he books a flight. And then I think probably the next time would be spring, but I'd like to go back. Had a kangaroo for this one. Ruby, say hello to the folks.
I know.
Someone asked, am I getting anything new from Flyduino? The answer is yes, but I can't really talk about it. A number of things new, actually.
Chad's a tease.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now that's got my interest piqued.
And then not ever talk about it, so don't ask him.
All right, I'll ask a question. Rotor Riot concern hype train stuff. I see that they just came out with a hype train flight controller. Are they going with the full product line? Or are they going to go with like a frame next and maybe some ESCs?
Well, they would probably have to answer that. I can't really answer that because I don't really have anything to do with Rotor Riot these days. But I'm sure that's what they probably want because, like I said, if you want to make a business in this industry, the manufacturing and the sales of products is where the money is. So the way that I make money as a pilot and the way that people like Steele make money as a pilot is to put your name on products or to work on products and get a share of the profit share. So of course, yeah, the more stuff that they're going to put out there with the Rotor Riot brand on there, the more it's going to help them. So I wouldn't be surprised if they bring out an ESC to sort of cover the whole lineup. And I do know that they were working on like a budget frame. The Rotor Riot guys were working on a budget frame with the community as well. So I'm not sure where that is. But yeah, that it seems logical to me. But to get the dedicated answer, you'd have to talk to them.
Gotcha. So when's the NOAC product line coming out then?
Probably never. I don't do that. It's not my thing. I've never been one for putting my name on stuff. So I mean, if you want to know when NOAC products are coming out, I was deeply involved with the V1S prop line with Zong. I had a very large input on the 230 Mojo. Not the design of the bell, but like the initial, like the specs, how like everything inside of the Hype Train original freestyle motors was sort of my base input on that. And of course the reverb sucked up 8 months of my life to do there. So any one of those products you could put Chad/Final Glide on there. It's just that I prefer not to put my name on it because there's other people besides me that worked on that. Like every product, it's not just me. So I'd rather let the product speak for itself. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I have half of those in my arsenal. So,
Mark, you should just come out with a NOAC line.
I'm telling you.
A NOAC line.
A lot of people.
Signature series.
Yeah.
How many? All right. How many people in chat here would buy a NOAC product line of drones? Like if you had the option of buying a Final Glide 5-inch prop setup. Would you
type 137 into the chat now if you would buy?
No, what is it? 8650.
137%. Yeah.
Or like Final Glide, like lube. Not to get too personal, but I feel like
that's already been done.
This year I wanted to make the April Fool's video prop lube, and I wanted to have Chad in, and we were going to call it the Final Glide.
You should do it. It'll be the first product in his line. Is going to be some type of lubricant.
Prop lube makes sense. It'll make your props more efficient.
Yeah, we'll put a koala on it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, they're already saying that they would buy one if it was properly tuned by you and like a full setup or whatever. I mean, it's
called a Mojo. It already exists.
Well, yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
So does that mean that we've finally finished this? If we've got to that level,
yeah, pretty much.
We're 7850. There we go. Someone's got it right. 7850.
Yeah.
I mean, it's Saturday night here in America, so I mean, it's
people be out.
Gotta end on a funky note somehow. Something.
Now you got them talking about the NOAC line of lube. I mean, they'd pay an extra $20 for Final Glide.
Yeah,
right?
Final Glide. I thought before I knew who Chad was exactly, I thought that he was like 3 different people. Essentially, I didn't know. He's gonna love this. Look at his face. And I thought that his flying name, because I never really looked at it, because everyone's, I don't know, it's so funky, and I'm just like, whatever. I didn't take the time to really read it fully.
This is the woman that studied English literature at university.
My degree is in like 18th century English lit, but I don't have time to read Final Glide. So I was just like, oh, it's like Finnalingus is what I thought it was. And then I thought there was somebody else called Final Glide Oss, and then I knew who Chad Nowak was, but I didn't make sense that those were actually like all just one person. It took a while.
All these comments are cracking me up.
It was
every time she's trying to be a smartass to me, she calls me Finnalingus.
Finnalingus. I'm like, stop your yapping, Finnalingus. I don't know what you're talking about. Those are private things, though.
They're telling us to make it FGA bearing oil, and maybe you should come out with a product FGA eyeliner remover.
That's called a fist, isn't it?
Oh,
That's the eyeliner.
I love you, Drew. I love you.
Panda eyes. Here's a couple of acres.
oh, yeah. Fiddlingus is now in chat now. Just so you know.
Okay. All right. I think we've officially reached rock bottom, so maybe it's time for us to end this live stream.
You're welcome, everybody.
Yeah, we finally went there. So on the promise that we will come back again and do another live stream nice and soon. Hopefully, similar people will be more than happy to sit here and just give me shit for the next live stream. You're more than welcome to come back if that's the case. I can take it. I'm a big boy. But yeah, thanks for coming on, guys, and ensuring that I don't have to talk for the entire 2 hours, because even I have troubles doing that. And also a big thanks to Bobby, who or Babak Saki. Sorry if I butchered your name, his real name, but anyway, Bobby, as he says he's fine with being called. Thanks for coming on. He had a very interesting view on things, and he's able to articulate it well. That's why I wanted to bring him on there. So maybe we can get him on talking about some more stuff down in the future. But are you reading comments? Like, no, enough. Yeah. Anyway, I am going to get out of here before this just blows up again. Thanks very much for being on the stream, everyone, and we will catch you again very soon. Ciao.
See you, Cedric. See you, everybody.